Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really happy to be here today to talk to you about my project, Wearable Sensors, a novel healthcare solution for the aging society. So growing up in a family with 3 generations, I've always been very close to my grandfather. When I was 4 years old, my grandfather and I were walking in a park in Japan when he suddenly got lost. It was one of the scariest moments I've ever experienced in my life, and it was also the first incident that informed us that my grandfather had Alzheimer's disease. Over the years, his condition got worse and worse, and his wandering in particular caused my family significant stress. About 2 years ago, my grandfather's wandering out of bed at night and became much more frequent, and my aunt, his primary caregiver, really struggled to stay awake at night to keep an eye on him, and even then often failed to catch him leaving the bed. I became really concerned about my aunt's well-being, as well as my grandfather's safety, and I searched extensively for, but really couldn't find a solution to my family's problems. Later, I found out that the struggles faced by my family were just a snapshot of a much larger societal burden. There are currently 5.2 million Alzheimer's patients in the United States alone, and over 65% of them wander. Alzheimer's disease is the fastest growing health threat to the United States. Every 67 seconds, someone in the US gets the disease. Caring for these patients cost the US $220 billion in 2013 alone, and that number is expected to multiply 5 times to about $1.2 trillion by the year 2050. So this overwhelming societal challenge, coupled with my concern for my family's struggles, really motivated me to find a solution. But how? One night, I was looking after my grandfather, and I saw him stepping out of the bed. The moment his foot landed on the floor, a light bulb flashed in my head. I thought, why don't I put a pressure sensor on the heel of his foot? As soon as he steps onto the floor, the pressure sensor would detect an increase in pressure caused by body weight, and then wirelessly send an audible alert to my aunt's smartphone, waking her up. That way, she could sleep much better at night. My desire to create a sensor-based system perhaps stemmed from my lifelong passion for sensors. When I was 6 years old, an elderly family friend fell down in the bathroom and suffered severe injuries. I became concerned about my own grandparents, and I decided to invent a wearable, smart bathroom, a motion sensor system that detects the falls of elderly patients and alerts caregivers wirelessly at their wristwatches. This and other research experience prepared me to create my system. However, my seemingly simple idea later proved to be very challenging for me to realize. When I laid out my plan, I realized that I faced 3 main challenges: creating a sensor, designing a circuit, and coding a smartphone app. So first, I had to create a wearable sensor that was thin and flexible enough not to affect the comfort of the patients walking. After extensive research and testing multiple different materials, I decided to print a film sensor with pressure-sensitive electrically conductive particles. Once pressure is applied, the connectivity between the particles increases. So therefore, I could design a circuit that would measure force by measuring electrical resistance. Next, I had to design a wearable wireless circuit. But wireless signal transmission consumes lots of power and requires heavy, bulky batteries. Thankfully, I was able to find out about the cutting-edge Bluetooth Low Energy technology, which consumes very little power and can be driven by a coin-sized battery. Third, I had to code a smartphone app that would transform the caregiver's smartphone into a remote monitor. For this, I had to expand upon my existing knowledge of Java and Xcode, and I also had to learn a lot about how to code for Bluetooth Low Energy devices. Integrating these components, I was able to create 2 prototypes, a sensor sock and a reattachable sensor assembly. I've tested both prototypes on my grandfather for nearly 10 months now, and so far they've had a 100% success rate in detecting the known cases of his wandering. Encouraged by these results, I decided to form my own startup, SensorX, to commercialize my device, which I named SafeWander. Over the summer, I beta tested my system at several residential care facilities, and I'm incorporating the feedback to improve the technology into a marketable product. Through my beta test, I realized that I needed to increase the signal transmission distance of my sensor. When you place a tiny antenna on the human body, the signal transmission distance becomes limited, and this is actually a common challenge that's faced by a lot of wearable systems. So I've decided to incorporate Wi-Fi and a cloud server to not only enable longer transmission distance, but also to enable data analytics for better healthcare. For example, we can examine correlations between the frequency of a patient's nightly wandering and his daily activities and diet. So that's all from me today, and thank you very much.
I'm Daniela Lee, and I'm 17 years old.
Hi, I'm Sadhika Malladi. I'm 16 years old, and today we're here to talk about our experiences working on the project that entered the Google Science Fair Global Finals.
So as a duo working on a computer science project, we came across many hurdles in collaboration. However, this project and working as a partner was really exciting in that it brought two people with very different interests in science together to tackle a small part of a massive problem, cancer.
And so our project addresses the deficiencies in current standard practice for treatment decisions for triple-negative breast cancer patients. We use
machine learning algorithms along with image analysis to see how the patient will respond to certain therapies, especially chemotherapy. And this knowledge is very important to optimize treatment and to make sure the patient is getting the right treatment so we save the valuable time.
And so what we do is we use a non-invasive scan in combination with image analysis and machine learning to create this prediction of whether a patient will respond to chemotherapy.
We decided to work with triple-negative breast cancer, or TNBC, because the patients foster an aggressive tumor, and they also lack certain hormone receptors that most chemotherapies target. So as you can see here, 15 to 25% of all breast cancers right now have triple-negative breast cancer. And this is alarming because the treatment options are sort of uncertain, and they're not as efficient as they should be right now.
And so current standard practice right now is to take surgical samples of the tumor. But even with these biopsies, doctors tend to use a one-size-fits-all regimen, which is alarming because each cancer is different.
So we were able to look at the breast cancers through these images, which were very non-invasive, and they were DCE MRI images, or dynamic enhanced. Now, before we go into what we did, we also want to point out, when you even have a simple cold, you want to make sure you get the right medicine, and you want to make sure that it's the best medicine you get. For cancer patients, this urgency is amplified because they don't have much time, and they can also have a potentially fatal outcome.
And so our project was essentially a lot of trial and error because we had to optimize both the machine learning algorithms and the image analysis algorithms. So essentially, you can see what we did here through a basic workflow. And so we use image analysis, like I said, with machine learning models, and we translate that to a biological impact on the patient. Some of the stumbling blocks we faced included collaborating on our work because I would sometimes have versions of code that Daniela wouldn't. And so when we were testing our models, it would get a little bit confusing.
So our models that use scans or image of the patients from just before chemotherapy were able to predict whether or not the patient was going to respond before you even had any cycles of chemotherapy. Our models that use scans from before and during the treatment were able to assess how well the patient was responding and whether or not this was the right path for them. So we were able to achieve a 74% accuracy in predicting whether or not the patient will respond to treatment before going through any chemotherapy and seeing if this is the right option for them. We were also able to achieve an 83% accuracy in seeing how the patient will respond while we're doing the treatment, and to see, like mentioned before, whether they will achieve a full response and whether they're going to need surgery in the future. Now, our best model so far has an 86% accuracy, and this model can tell you mid-treatment, using mid-treatment assessment, how the patient will finish the chemotherapy, whether they're going to have residual tumors or not.
And so when we were working as a team, like I mentioned before, it was really difficult for us to sync our versions of code because there's no Google Docs per se for coding. There's nothing with active syntax highlighting that we can both look at the same time. While there is GitHub, we both couldn't edit code at the same time. And so sometimes, like I said, I would have optimized the algorithms, but Daniela would be running a previous version of the algorithms.
And so we also ran a lot of different models, so sharing the results with each other was also a bit messy. However, despite these struggles, we were able to save time by working together as a team because we can run the different models at different times and all at once.
And so because we were different people, we had varying interpretations on the results that we got. I was on the computer science side of the project, and so I was really interested in how machine learning works, how we can teach a computer to recognize patterns that's lost on the human eye.
I was more of the, well, I like to think that I was like the biologist or the medical doctor of the project, and maybe even science popularizer, because I was really intrigued by how our models will impact the patient life, starting with the non-invasiveness of the imaging to the patient's changing morphology throughout treatment, their emotions, and how this application can be clinically viable. Our aha moment was a little bit different from Kenneth's. I actually, like I said, I wasn't as well versed in computer science as Sadhika is. So one time I accidentally deleted half of the code. So because I was still a little bit confused about the image analysis and about machine learning, I one day was not able to compile one of the models, and I had no idea what was going on. So I went to our mentor, and he was a little bit perplexed as well, but we were somehow able to force the model to work by fixing some parts of it. And throughout this whole process, I had no idea that I just deleted half of the texture measurements or half of the image analysis algorithms, but I ran it anyway, and after a few hours, this model was completed. The accuracy rate of this model, 86%, our best model yet.
And so you should have seen my face when I got the email from her. I was like, what? I didn't get anything like this. We were like around maybe 74% before this. And so it just goes to show that even the strangest mistakes, I mean, I don't know if that mistake's really replicable, but I mean, even the strangest mistakes lead to the greatest insights. And it's with these insights that we went to the Google Science Fair Global Finals. And so you can see some pictures from our experience here. I'm on a Google bike too. I mean, we just had a lot of fun. We got to present our project to judges, meet amazing finalists, receive feedback, and most importantly, our work got on this global stage.
Because our project involved machine learning algorithms, one of the main limitations we had was the lack of patient data. And this is how we think the cloud can factor into our project. Institutions around the world have people gathering data, but they aren't able to share this data effectively. We think that with more data, our models can become more refined.
And so one of the emerging trends that we all know about right now in computer science is big data and harnessing the power of multiple minds to do what one mind cannot. We recently heard about a very interesting project in Switzerland where they put all of their information online, and essentially coders from around the world are able to contribute to the solution.
This data is hosted on secure servers, so it's all compliant with the HIPAA regulations. And the programmers are invited to code and to harness the data to find solutions to certain problems. If you think about this in the context of our work, these people can come, they can contribute their ideas to how we can find responses to chemotherapy, and this can completely find us a new direction in our project and help us advance our models.
And so as you can see, the influence of the cloud and big data can really take our project to the next level. Ideally, in 5 years, we'd be able to apply our model to other cancers besides triple-negative breast cancer and make it clinically viable. Thank you.
Sure. How about over one more? So
yeah.
Let's get everybody down on one side. Thanks. Here, Daniela, I'll take that from you. Thank you. All right, so, not bad. Do you guys think? So great job, guys. How does it feel to destroy the old saying, that parents have where, well, I can disrupt them from what they're doing. It's not like they're curing cancer or anything. You kind of threw that one out the window, didn't you? So I understand, Kenneth, your grandfather is suffering from Alzheimer's. But why did you guys tackle such difficult challenges as, cancer and Alzheimer's?
So is your question that why?
Yeah, why not? I understand there was a personal connection.
Right.
But why would you, despite that, why would you tackle something so daunting? Why something so difficult?
Sure.
detecting cancer. There are labs spending billions of dollars on this stuff, and you guys just sort of cook this up in your kitchen, right?
So yeah, I think there was definitely a personal connection there,
Yep.
and seeing the struggles of my aunt, I think was what really inspired me to create my solution. My aunt had to stay awake all night to keep an eye on my grandfather. She was feeling very fatigued during the daytime since she got no sleep. She had to sacrifice time that she would usually spend on her work and with her family. And seeing that struggle was what really inspired me. It sort of broke my heart, I think. And so that emotional connection was there. And I think that was what really inspired me to tackle the problem, because I really wanted to help my aunt.
Daniela, what about you?
We also had a lot of personal sort of relations to our project. Both of us had family members who have passed away due to sort of hit and miss treatments with cancer. And since triple negative breast cancer is one of the most aggressive ones, we decided to tackle one of the most aggressive ones.
So, damn the obstacles. Why not tackle the stuff, right?
Yeah.
Right? Fresh eyes and fearlessness. So this actually goes to the point we all face, which is, why is it as we get older we just become so risk averse? Why not tilt at the windmill? So each of you demonstrated that you tackled the problem with fresh eyes, you created stuff. If the solutions didn't exist, you created them. You had the flexible sensors. You guys both came out with an analysis, the machine learning to help you break down the patterns that were otherwise eluding people. And one of the things I noticed Sadhika, you and Daniela talked about was embracing the lessons from your mistakes. So is that something that came naturally, or did you guys have to just reconcile yourself? Did you have to teach yourselves to learn from it, or were you just frustrated that you kept having all these errors and not what you wanted to achieve?
Right, so I would say that when I was learning these complicated topics, like machine learning is not something you learn in high school generally. And so when I was learning these topics, it was very hit and miss. I mean, I was just running things, I was trying things. I mean, I think that was kind of the stage where I realized it's no longer about me, it's no longer about my intelligence, it's more about tackling another problem. It's not about advancing myself, but really advancing the field.
That's what I hear from most teenagers. Yeah, you got to hang out with my daughters, I think. Okay. Speaking of which, have you ever, in the process of your creating, did you ever think, hey, this is going to have potentially a commercial impact to me, or did you approach this purely from, a scientific perspective? What was your motivation down deep? I understand, Kenneth, yours was helping your aunt, your grandfather, et cetera, but did that thought of commercialization factor in? Was that a motivator ever?
Not really. In fact, when we got our results, we didn't even know it was like a really good result. We just heard from our mentor, oh, wow, this is a good result. You could publish it. So we were aiming more at publication in a journal. We weren't even really thinking about Google Science Fair. We just tried that, oh, let's just see what happens. And now we're getting comments about how we should try commercializing it and making it actually clinically viable, which we never imagined we would ever even try at all.
You were just looking to pad the resume for your college applications, weren't you?
We were looking at like having fun researching, not really what's
Fun.
going to happen.
Passion. But this is fantastic. This is what I have found in common with people who really make progress, right? They're passionate about what they do. So despite the rejection and the failures that you guys have seen, you were always encouraged to continue to the next level, right?
Yeah, I'd say definitely. I mean, there was a lot of encouragement from our families and from our community and from our mentors. And I mean, we hit a lot of roadblocks, definitely. I mean, Daniela deleting half the code.
You're still holding that against her, aren't you? Yeah. Don't be bitter. It worked out.
Yeah, it did work out.
When I launched my website, which you can all visit, safewonder.com, I was really surprised by the number of people who are suffering from this problem of caring for wandering patients and really struggling to keep an eye on them. And I received a lot of inquiries asking when my device would be on the market and when they could purchase the device. And that really further motivated me to commercialize the device. So I felt that there was a really enthusiastic, I felt that there was a need for the device beyond what I'd originally expected.
Oh, I can think of a fantastic. I need 2 strips, one in a size 8 from my 16-year-old daughter. Right. I need one that says "Girl on the Run." Right. So, all right. Any questions for the participants? Anybody else wondering about there? Do they make house calls? Yes, Andy.
So I've got teenage sons, and you know, thanks. It's obviously very humbling, as
It worked, didn't
said
it?
earlier. Absolutely, It just blows you away. What was the self-learning experience you've taken from all this that I could share with my sons and their friends at their age?
Well, I think that one of the things that I've always encouraged other people to do when they ask me, what can we learn from your experience, is that I think the first step to creating any solution that helps other people is to first observe the problems around you. And then once you have a firm understanding of the problem, you can begin to think about a solution that, a creative solution that approaches the problem. And then once you think of a solution, work hard at it, and then with some perseverance, you can definitely create a solution that helps people. One thing that I've definitely learned from my experience is that you can be a totally ordinary kid like me and still be able to create something that helps the people around you. So you don't need to be a genius. You don't need to be anybody special. You just need to be someone who recognizes a problem and then works hard at it.
There's still hope. Fantastic. Any bits of wisdom, Sadhika?
I would say I kind of took the opposite approach from Kenneth, and so I kind of thought about what I was interested in, what I really liked doing, and then I thought about, well, okay, I like doing it, but how can I make sure that other people benefit from this? And so that's kind of the opposite direction, but you can approach it either way.
Sort of a pay-it-forward investment.
Yeah.
Excellent. See, there's hope for all of us. Now, by the way, Kenneth, I don't think either of the 3 of you are ordinary, by the way. So congratulations on your achievements. You guys have done wonderful work. You're inspiring. And we wish you the best.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.